have to use the handout at the end.
Oh, okay.
And then my
Nice.
I don't know. How do I do that?
There's feedback right now.
Yeah, I know. I have to get there. Andy, can you check and see that it's recording on YouTube?
I can. Let me turn off my speaker so I don't foul that up. It says there's a live meeting going on in the list.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Hey, I see it.
Because I had to X out of it to get the feedback to go away. So I didn't want to stop that from happening.
Yeah, it's going.
Okay, thank you. Andy, would you like water?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
I was lying. Well, I was lying. Yeah, I did see it.
Yeah, it's all the time doing something, you know, and I'm working over there and with my granddaughter, we like granddaughter. It's our pleasure.
Which portion would you like?
Oh,
No. Maybe when we get into the tutors.
Yeah.
hand it
And what?
over at Haven.
So that'll get us through all the zoning stuff.
Yeah.
And then when we get to allowed uses.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking for I gotta get the water move, go ditch one.
Hi, Jared. Good evening.
Yeah, that's what I did for Rick. We installed a big pump so we could get the water from all time.
Yeah, I just need to circulate that water, and then I'm gonna start using it, you know, just been going in and out, I'm gonna start using it, you know. So, listen.
I think they can circulate the water and then out.
You know, and I'm not gonna look my pond, it stays cloudy, but it never gets stuck, you never get out, you never, I got some big cories in there, and every day.
You constantly have water.
That's one, I like that clear, it's like, I guess that might be too much to ask for. It's 6.5 feet, and 7 feet.
I was talking to one of the planners.
Not deep, I don't think.
Or it's showing on something
Yeah.
that's allowable between
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
approach me. Kind of liking something small.
Oh, huh.
But then I just realized there's so many experiences. And I wrote a status for 10,000 tasks.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe some relief.
Yeah. I might have a recent college grad.
Oh, really? I think that, I'm thinking maybe. I think they let us.
Well, she's not a planner. She would be more of a secretary. You never know. Yeah.
It's 6
Yeah, let those people come in.
Yeah. Sorry.
We have a couple of people in the foyer there signing in and doing that, so as soon as they get seated, we will begin. I don't have any long cords for the microphone.
Oh.
Oh, you can make one though.
That's a trip.
Run it back here.
No, I haven't seen this.
You can share. Okay, you guys, we're going to call this gathering together to order. And it's not a regular type council meeting or anything, so we don't have to do a Pledge of Allegiance. But I want to thank you all for being here. This is hopefully a good opportunity for us to express to you the difference between land uses, differences between the tourist destination, commercial, and the residential areas, and hopefully be able to provide you the opportunity to make an informed decision about your property. I got all wigged out with connecting this. What an ohm. No. So this meeting is also being live streamed via YouTube. So people who perhaps cannot attend tonight or are not participating through Zoom will have the opportunity to watch it and learn the same things that you're learning. Included on the table was the sign-in sheet. And I hope everybody took the opportunity to fill that out. We just, in case we're missing somebody that's not here, we want to be able to reach out, connect with them, and share this video with them and be able to answer their questions too. Also on the table was a land use map and a zoning map, which for the most part are very compatible. They just mean a couple of different things. Land use is what you can do. Zoning is specifically what you can do. So that's information you can take home with you. I also put together the PowerPoint we're going to be going through today, so that as we go through it, if you need to make notes on certain pages and stuff, you can do that and take that with you for future continuity. So let me get my PowerPoint going. So welcome. Let's get this party started. There's the land use diagram that you have, showing all the different land use designations within the town of Loomis, the town limits. The circles on that map are the entry points to Loomis from our outside jurisdictions. And for the most part, then it just shows you all the different land uses within towns. You'll see on the left upper side and the bottom right side, a lot of RA lands. Those are residential agricultural parcels. And for the most part, the zoning in that area or the land use designation requires 4.6 acres or more to be considered RA. There are many legal non-conforming lot sizes, parcel sizes. So in a case like that, if you're under that 4.6, you're grandfathered in from what your size is, but it means you cannot split that parcel any further than 4.6 acres. So if you had a 12-acre piece, yeah, you could split that possibly 4 ways, 3 ways at least, depending on site constraints and things like that. That same scenario plays down to the RE, residential estate parcels, which are 2.3 minimum acres per parcel. Again, when you look at those, some of those are big, some of them are small. It's all about grandfathering. The RR, the rural residential, ends up being 1 acre or less. Same, the differences between those 3 residential uses, like in RA, you can have horses, you can have ag lands, you can do things like that. When you get into that RR category, the rural residential, your lot size is smaller and your animal keeping standards change. So on a bigger parcel, yeah, you can have a bunch of horses. On a smaller parcel, you're only going to get a couple. In your PowerPoint, it also gives you the complete definition of these things, and since it's all printed there and you have that information, you can see exactly what I'm talking about there. Maybe I should also introduce myself if you don't know me. I'm Mary Beth Van Boris. I'm the planning director for the town. With me at my side is Christy Consolini from Hauge Brook and Associates and Anders Hauge from Hauge Brook and Associates. They're contract planning staff for the town. They've been working on the update of the general plan and know this stuff just as well as I do. So, part of this too is that in doing our general plan update with which these guys have been so involved with, we're looking at doing these kind of changes. Ever since we started the general plan update process almost 2 years ago. Yeah, 2.5 years ago, we were soliciting and requesting land use designation changes from property owners. The ones that we received went through committees, and the committees made recommendations on those changes. Some of them were, yeah, let's let that go forward. Some of them were, no, let them go through their own process. We have a couple of alternatives, like your properties, because your land use change request came in right at the very end of right before the Planning Commission and Town Council were looking at recommending the crafting of the environmental documents and stuff. Since it was right on that verge, we took your parcels, your requests, to the Planning Commission and Town Council, and they were the ones that requested that we meet with you and explain these things so that you can make an intelligent decision going forward. I was going somewhere with that. So that's kind of the background, and I should have started there.
Or whatever, and that they did decide to see us, and that you want us to be honest on what we're deciding to do.
Correct, correct. And, it was their recommendation that we include this as an alternative in the EIR, so it doesn't hold up our general plan process, so that the EIR can go forward. Your area will be carved out as an alternative based on the outcome of this meeting. If everybody is good, then it'll go forward that way. If we have those changes in between there, we'll have further discussions tonight.
Good, it's like everybody agrees on the same thing.
Yeah, we'll get into that discussion in a moment. Go ahead.
Yes, if they decide to go forward, or the residents decide to move forward, what is the formal process? Is there an application process that's needed, or was the petition sufficient for that change?
The petition was sufficient, and the council has agreed to use it as an alternative. So if they hadn't pursued that, then as landowners, you would be collectively coming together, submitting an application for a general plan amendment land use change, and it would go forward on your dime. This way it goes forward under the guise of the general plan, and you're not out of pocket anything.
You mentioned being grandfathered in, the people on Martin Lane and Benning Lane. Is there any way to get documentation, proof that we are grandfathered in as CT non-compliant residential?
Yeah, we could do that.
So, right, we'd be looking for documentation that evidences the grandfather clause, but also a question, so if one of these current owners were to sell, would they lose that grandfather with the new purchaser of the home?
Good question. No, as long as you have a residential parcel that sells to a residential person, they're buying it as a single-family residential home, that use can continue.
And it would continue to be non-compliant?
Non-conforming.
Non-conforming residential?
Correct.
Right, okay.
It's at the time that property sells, and say the new owner comes in and makes it commercial, then it would never go back to residential. So, those steps have to kind of be in place. For the commercial properties, if a commercial property sells in that area, so now we're talking the daycares and, the ones that have been converted, if they sell as a business, then that business would continue. If that business use expires for 6 months or more, it could go back to residential and be legal non-conforming. So it all depends, you could sell the business and somebody could make it their home. But on the other hand, if it's a home, it can stay a home or it can be made into a business.
As long as it's not left vacant for
6 months or more, yeah.
Wait, I'm a little confused, because I thought you just said that if a resident sells it for commercial use, then they lose that residential, but then you just said if they don't have commercial for 6 months, then it can revert. So I'm a little confused, unless I misunderstood, maybe you can.
Yeah, I probably misstated it, yeah. He's like, yeah, you did. Yeah, so the commercial would continue commercial, the residential would continue residential, but if the residential, if it's 6 months or more, then it reverts to commercial.
Then you have to do a commercial.
And
Then you have to
once
do
it reverts
commercial.
to commercial, then once we sell commercial, if we do, then the residential is lost.
Yes,
Forever.
So let's say that I live on a lane with 4 houses, and I'm in the middle house of these 4 houses, and let's say that all of my neighbors sell to commercial around me, and there's a lot of commercial uses.
Mhm.
So I'm the only resident in the middle of a commercial lane, which is obviously not beneficial to that one resident who bought in a residential community. So I'm seeing a problem there.
It's like a tough situation.
Pardon me?
Put balloons on your house.
Well, that's why we bought there. When we bought there in 1988, and we bought that property, it was all RA. We chose RA, and the reason is, and when we did the preschool, we converted a home into a preschool. So our plan was when we go to retire, which ain't far off, down the lane, we're getting up in age. We're talking 40 years ago, 37 years ago. Anyway, we were gonna convert that back to a home and sell it. Then when that property next door went up for sale, we were told by the town that there was a wetlands back there, we can't develop back there. We also were told that we cannot live in that house. You cannot use it as a residence. And we were like, well, that really stinks, because that's, that cuts that property in half for one, and the other thing was the house couldn't have been occupied for any reason. So we thought about that, and other things came up. But now we find out that's not true at all, because it's totally not true for what's going on. So it's kind of disappointing, and the reason why we're here is because we were all blindsided. None of us knew any of this for the last 2 years. We don't come into town. I mean, we're way out there. So I saw all the notices that you guys hang on the road, you put on the sign, you put up on this building and so forth. I'm driving for one, I'm not looking, and I didn't notice anything. So again, so we were blindsided back in February saying, oh, by the way, here you go. Whoa, so we decided to get together as a group to say, wait a minute, this isn't right. So in reality, we would like to be, like we always talk about, we should be RA. because that's what we were. Now, if that doesn't fit the plan of all these individuals, then we want to do some kind of RE. But the thing is that by being assigned to that, we don't want to be blindsided again. As the lady was saying, we don't want our neighbors to sell commercial, now all of a sudden we're landlocked in, and that's not good. So that's why, you know.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I noticed was, of course, Betty Lane and Martin Lane are both private roads. Any kind of development would then lead those to become public roads, and widening and all that kind of stuff.
Disasters, yeah.
Yeah,
Consumers.
When we got together, you know, and we're discussing this, we were advised, okay, you want to, you know, everybody signed the petition and it was said, okay, you want to do RA. Now, it seemed like that was a problem when I was watching, because they're like, okay, well, we need so many units, and now we have this unit deficit, something we had no idea that Loomis had to get to a certain number
of housing units.
So, is there a suggestion, like, oh, if you did rural residential, then we can count 5 units or whatever, you know, or 3 or whatever, but then you still have the option where, you know, when you sell it, say, residential, that's just what we were told by one of the council members. They said, this is what you need to do, this will solve it, and now it seems like that was creating an issue there.
I don't think this group needs to worry about our housing numbers. This is about what you guys want.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, should we choose RR, RA, or RE? We originally went with RA under suggestion, but maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe RR is the right thing.
Yeah, we're curious, what can you do or can you not do on those 3?
Well,
Oh wait, yeah, maybe we could read over this.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, and I think another question is, as you're looking for that, this question may be answered together, that by the designation, tourism and commercial, what limitations do these properties have that they didn't have as residential?
Yeah, we'll get to that point. It's part of our slideshow here.
all right.
So on this page, what you see is the difference in land use categories between the residential, agricultural, residential estate, rural residential, residential low density, and the tourist destination commercial. So this is where those housing units come in. So in RA, rural agricultural, you get 1 dwelling unit per 4.6 acre parcel. RE is 1 dwelling unit per 2.3 acre parcel. RR, 1 dwelling unit per acre. Low density, you get 2 dwelling units an acre. And in the tourist destination commercial, you get 2 to 10 dwelling units per acre in a mixed use project. So what that means is you have ground floor commercial with residential above it, mixed use structure.
So mixed use means residential and commercial, not different types of commercial.
Correct. Yeah, mixed use for us is commercial with a residential component attached to it.
And if you have, say, 2 acres and you go with RR, you can put a second dwelling on your property because you have 2 acres. It's 1 unit per 1 acre.
Correct.
And you would be legal.
Correct.
Count, you know, now you could do a second dwelling of 1,500 square feet or less on your property.
Per code, per town code, yes. Per state ADU requirements, I think they only go up to 1,200 square feet per dwelling unit. You can also throw in an SB9 split, which is a state approved mechanism for a ministerial approval of a second dwelling, for splitting your parcel.
In-law quarters, like maybe?
Yeah.
That applies to all of these designations?
That applies to all of these, except the commercial.
Yeah, all the residential.
Except for the
Yeah.
commercial, so let's say somebody on Betty Lane's like, oh, I wanna do a little in-line unit, my kids are gonna come. It's so expensive in California, but we got this land here, come live by us, mom and dad, right? Then they couldn't do that because it's designated commercial.
Correct.
Right now, yep.
Correct. So even adding on to your existing house wouldn't be allowed at this point because you're a commercial designation.
Oh,
And
okay.
you would be adding on residential.
You can't build a new house, you can't add on, you can't do anything residential and it can work. That's been the issue, that's what we found out.
Yeah.
We're not happy about it.
So
So-
I couldn't add on, say I wanted to add an extra bedroom or something like that on my house.
What about like a barn?
Yeah,
That's an accessory.
Yeah,
accessory
accessory unit.
structure,
It's not a living quarter, yeah.
yeah.
If it involves human living,
No.
no. If it's
No.
commercial, if it's like storage, storage, shed or like vehicle replacement, right?
Yeah, there's, let me run through this really quick. You have the zoning map, so that's pretty straightforward. The same thing with zoning, we've got it all worked out on what you can do. And when we get into the hearts of the matters, what I was trying to, we have the,
Oh,
you okay with that?
yeah.
So included in this PowerPoint is a suitability slide, which lists all your independent parcels and their current parcel size. So in your request for the RA, for the 4.6 designation, none of these parcels comply because they're 2.8 acres or less in size. So when we're doing land use, we have to pick the thing that's closest to the designation that it's going into. So as you can see on this table, you're not eligible for the RA. There's one parcel that meets the 2.3 acre RE requirement. And the majority, everybody, it falls into the RR 1 acre minimum. And of course, currently in the TD-CT zone, you already have that built-in lot size. As you can see on Krasnodemski, I hope I said that right, Krasnodemski. Okay. The RR, they would be allowed, but technically they're non-conforming because they're just under an acre. But they would be grandfathered in, legal non-conforming. It just means you wouldn't be able to split that parcel any further. Unless you did it under an SB9 lot split. And under an SB9 lot split that's been granted by the state, you could split that any lot 60-40, but nothing further than that. So if you have a 2 acre parcel, you split it 60-40. If it's under an acre, 60-40. As long as you have utilities available, public water, public sewer. If it's septic, I've ran into issues where environmental health, in an SB9 split, the split off portion, the 40%, because of its proximity to public water and sewer, had to connect to those. And then environmental health says, oh, well, you're connecting that one. Your existing parcel is now adjacent to that, and you're going to have to connect that old parcel that's currently on septic and well to that service. And I fought with environmental health, and I won. So, because it wasn't reasonable. It's a 10 acre lot. They're taking, a little piece of it. And for a house and a secondary dwelling unit on the main parcel that has 2 wells and septic that serve them both, why do they have to abandon that? Why can't they keep it? So the environmental health director and I had a good conversation, and he says, if you're okay, I'm okay. So those are things that we get to deal with those kind of applications. So.
And is that all going to be in writing somewhere?
In what regard?
Well, you just said that you won this battle, so I'm wondering, is there a writing in this battle? And I'm basically getting into the story. You talk about the one parcel that was going to start using city water, and as a parcel was on a well. Are you talking about parcels owned by 2 different owners, or the same owner owns the same parcel?
It's one owner, one parcel that was getting split under the state SB9 legislation. So, and that's a workout between the town and environmental health for the benefit of the applicant.
Good. So this probably doesn't affect this room, my question still stands, is that in writing somewhere?
That's a case by case basis, so that is based on the approval of the SB 9, based on the approval of environmental health on that lot, that property owner specifically, that's the only place it applies. So
Okay,
it's case by case.
so
Those
it's-
come, yeah.
we can't take that rule and apply it to this group,
You
is
can.
what I'm hearing. Oh, okay. Can you tell us, can anyone tell us what the designation for Martin and Benny Lane were prior to turning it into CT? Was it an RR, an RA, an RE?
RA,
Is it RA?
all of it was
I never
RA.
looked into that.
In rural
I don't know.
agriculture.
No.
Rural agriculture, and then it switched to, commercial reserve, rural agriculture. Now it's commercial tourist, private non.
Residential,
conforming Residential.
yeah.
So it looks like, I guess we should have been told RR, because that's what we, it's.
It's more appropriate for the size of the
Of the
lots.
parcels.
Mhm.
So that would be our recommendation for you going
So the
forward.
recommendation would be, you talked about an alternative, and then you said that would be our recommendation. I'm assuming the recommendation is for RR, and that goes for the alternative that you discussed before. So can you talk a little bit about that, because I think the group wants to know more about what our options are here.
That is your option, the RR versus the RA.
And can you talk about what an alternative is? I mean, how do we do it? So do I just raise my hand and say,
The
okay,
alternative
RR?
in the general plan,
Or how do we just say, make it RR? Do we raise
oh,
our hands, or
what
what's that?
I brought for you for the end of this meeting is a little sheet for you to fill out that says, I wish to pursue a land use change request on my above referenced property, or I do not.
And that's the.
And that's gonna be sufficient for us.
So can we do that
And the land use change request is from commercial tourist to rural residential.
So you do that for parcel, not for neighborhood. So like, let's say I choose RR, but she could stay with commercial and build something, Walmart next to me.
That's part of the evaluation once we know what everybody wants.
Oh, so you would take this whole peak area that's CT and turn it in, so it's not I'm RR and her next door is CT. You're saying
Yeah, we have to have
everybody needs
compatible
CT.
land uses.
Okay, that's important to know.
I know,
But it-
with RA, everybody was on board, so maybe all.
So what,
And for you, Devin, it doesn't really apply
Yeah, I'm
because
just here for
you're
the
across
show,
the
yeah.
street, you're already that RR
Already
component. Yeah.
so whenever
That's
it's
across the street, it's my mother. So I want to make sure she's okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to us designating what we want to be, it's really gonna be those folks who are in the pink back there. It's a majority vote, and if we all say, yeah, we're gonna be RR, great, or all RR as that neighborhood,
This is.
am I understanding that
Yes.
correctly?
Yes.
And what's the majority? I mean, is it a typical majority, 6-4, or?
You know, there's not going to be a vote on this, other than the council will make a decision on the land uses they want. So under general plan law, under court cases in California for 40 years, there are some things that we have to look at. The land uses have to be consistent. They have to be to some degree adjacent. So you have to look at all those things when you're designating the land for the land use that it's going to be designated. So those things have not been decided yet. You're going to make the request. We're asking for you to sign the request so we have record of it. But it will go, environmental document's going to be produced to look at the impacts of keeping it the same or changing it. And then it will come to the planning commission in about August, and then they'll begin to make a recommendation. It will probably go to the council somewhere in the November timeframe for a final decision. So there's a fair amount of process to go through yet, but it's not a vote of the residents. It's not a vote of the landowners. It's a recommendation of the land users, and the council will make a decision based on the law and what's allowed.
Okay, two things. A couple of people weren't able to be here tonight, so what kind of expiration do we have on these documents that need to be submitted?
No expiration.
Okay. And then secondly, does SB
Sooner the better, though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'll take some with me for those who couldn't be with us tonight. Does SB 330 have any impact on this decision?
No, SB 330 deals with new subdivisions, so there's a subdivision being processed right now under SB 330.
The only thing that it would impact,
down density though?
that's
Okay.
in the decision-making process,
And
that is
that
something
concerns
to
me.
consider. to
Correct.
consider.
So the town will take a look at all their land use decisions. We're doing a matrix. It kind of says, we're adding here, we're removing here, here's the net change, and we're going to have to make sure there is zero negative change.
Right.
That will happen as the council looks at all the land uses.
There has to be a zero negative change for that.
Has to be zero negative pursuant to the state.
So what were we grandfathered in as? Is it just regular residential? Is it what we were when we purchased the place and what it was zoned at the time, which was residential agricultural?
Grandfathering is based on the existing use you have, so it's just that if you're in a single-family home today, in the commercial tourism, you're grandfathered as a single-family home as long as you stay in there and
So
operate.
just as
as a-
residential?
Just that,
We
single-family residential.
Vacated for 6 months.
That's, you can keep your house, but as Mary Beth said, if you want to add on a room, whatever, that's not going to be allowed under the current tourist commercial. So you're limited to the existing use you have as a grandfathered use. You can stay right there.
Okay, if I had converted my house from 3-bedroom to 2-bedroom, can I go back to 3-bedroom?
As long as it's inside the walls, that's not going to make it.
Okay.
Under the roof,
Footprint,
yeah.
the same
It's-
footprint.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
So I'm assuming that in 2002, I think, was when we changed to CT. I'm assuming that this all went through this same process.
Yes, it did.
And how was it noticed? Was it public notice?
Way
Were
back,
the residents?
I have no
We were
idea what they did in
postcards,
2000.
Because I can tell you, my family
Yeah.
wasn't noticed.
I
No,
think we
right.
had
Yeah,
no-
that's
no
really
contact.
the
Yeah, we didn't
consensus
know
of
anything.
none of
And
us
we were
were-
here we've been here for 45 years, so I can tell you that we had no concept that we changed to
You're right,
tourism
until we
commercial.
heard it from somewhere else and saw it.
Because these are- Yeah, it's essentially limited our use of our property. We
Yeah.
can expand our property, we can have, I can have, and I'm exaggerating here, I probably can't have a Walmart next door, especially because it's down the road, but you understand my point, is
Yeah.
God knows what could be next to our house, bring in, God knows what kind of pets, and so there's significant limitations as I see on us being CT, and especially if we wish to sell. So that's something that we would also have to notice the buyer of, I'm sorry, but you can never expand the footprint. Feel free to go to town inside, but you can't expand the footprint, so we've
That
got
would
all
be part
kinds
of
of
this.
limitations.
those are disclosures.
Yeah.
So on this slide here, allowable uses, it shows you the difference between RA, RE, RR, RS, RM, all those residential zoning districts. So you can look down the RR to see what your permitted uses are, whether or not you need a minor use permit, a use permit for, let's say you wanted a golf course country club in the RR zone, you would need to obtain a use permit for that. That application goes through a public review process to Planning Commission for approval with findings and conditions of approval. And, as long as that goes forward, it goes forward. You can do a mobile home park in the RR with a use permit. There are just some, things you can do, yeah. Home occupations. As you go down, you get to retail trade. In the RR zone, accessory retail and services is an allowable use. Hay feed sales would be under a minor use permit. So just things to consider going forward. Oh, go ahead.
I had a question, has the owner of the Horseshoe Bend property been contacted regarding this meeting, this process? And would they have any say in the vote for the recommendation, given their CT property adjacent to Horseshoe?
No, they would stay their CT. We have never received a request from them. This particular CT group was carved out independently of the other CT, and even the little homes, same scenario as this, on Horseshoe Bar. So we didn't reach out and contact those people either. This was specific to the request that you guys signed the petition to change from CT or TD to an RA. So we're just addressing this group.
My property is in the CT, and I just want to confirm, as I understand it, my property is not on the table.
Correct.
So would I have a vote tonight in the recommendation, or would I not?
You can have a vote.
If you want to change your property.
We would be glad to have you.
I want to vote to say that I want to stay the same, can I make that?
Yeah, you can have a piece of paper, say, no, I don't wish a change, and it'll go forward.
And speaking of noticing, that part of this whole process is there will be official noticing once the environmental document is released, and we're hoping that's released in July. There will be notices to all the properties that are being considered for a land use designation change, along with the properties within 300 feet of those. So that will be an official notice that goes out. The council requested that property owners be given a certified mail notice, not the 300 feet, but the actual property owner be given a certified mail, so we know you have it. And then the other noticing, which will be through the email blast notice that are made, the newspaper notice, the Facebook notice, all those other notices.
The town's website.
And the town's website will all be made. But these properties that have been requested will get a certified notice that you're being considered within this general plan amendment, and this is the schedule of meetings to move forward. So none of that official noticing has occurred yet. This has all been people making requests, a year of committee meetings, whatever, that have looked at these things.
May I clarify that it looks like the residential designation, or the RR designation, allows a mobile park, a mobile home park in the area. So if we were to move to RR designation, would that mean that Jared really could turn his property into a mobile home park and not need a special access from Royce Road?
He just stated he wants to stay commercial.
Right, I'm just saying that if the rest of the neighborhood changed, would that change and allow that to happen without a special access? I want to make sure that the neighbors know what they're voting for and what this change could imply for them.
On the access, let's talk about that. The general plan does say that access for commercial is not recommended onto Brace Road. However, these are isolated parcels, and by law, you cannot deny somebody access to that road. Same with the residential properties on Brace Road are not supposed to have driveways on Brace Road under the general plan because it's an arterial. You should have a collector road that comes into Brace Road. So the town is treating any commercial activity within the CT zone onto Brace Road as we cannot deny access. The state does not allow us to deny access or use of the property, so therefore access is allowed. Same with on the residences who have driveways on Brace Road. We're not denying access. The town is allowing access on those also.
I have a
So
question about that.
That's not the same as having 50 people coming to your property.
I'm just telling.
Right, no, I was just saying, I had a question about that though.
Yeah.
So the municipal code, is that different than the general plan?
The general plan serves everything, and the municipal code has to be consistent with the general
The
plan.
municipal code is actually worded differently, and it uses words like shall not. It doesn't say may or could, it just says shall not, or.
Go to the general plan. The general plan trumps everything else.
Okay, because I looked in the general plan, I didn't see any wording on that, that's what I was looking for specifically. So anyway, I can talk to you about that.
Yeah, but because you cannot deny access, pursuant to various court cases in California, you cannot deny access to a use. It is a designated use, you have to allow that use. So that's the reason that access can be allowed on Brace Road. And the general plan committees have recommended that language be removed.
I saw that.
Yeah.
We were not part of, none of
Yeah,
this
that's right,
group,
right,
except for one owner was parcel to those meetings. In the last 2 years, we weren't invited to any meetings, we didn't get any input, but I understand what you're saying, they recommended to change that.
Well, I believe the city sent out 2 postcards to say we're engaged in this process, and do you want to be on a committee? It was, in a number of ways it was advertised.
Yes, I'm familiar with that, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But we were told that anybody who bought that, like Jared buying that property, you have to follow the rules that when you bought it, the rules were there. And the rule was, he's a smart guy, he read the general plan, it says, shall not have commercial access. So it's like, I'm buying a parking lot in the middle of a lake. Well, how are people gonna park there? There's no bridge. Well, you can't deny me the bridge, right?
Right.
So it's like, well, why would you buy an island in the middle of a lake for a parking lot?
I wish I knew that.
Especially if you specialize in building parking lots.
It just
That's
doesn't
your
make,
bread and butter and you don't know?
it
Come
just
on.
doesn't make sense. So I there, obviously this loophole, this problem was made by predecessors, not you guys.
Well, that's why we wanna
And
change
we're
it.
dealing with that.
That's why we
right
want
now.
to change it.
And some people are exploiting it.
We just wanna change it, that's why we wanna change it, I think that's the emotional part of it.
But I think maybe it should be mentioned, what you had mentioned to me when we talked on the phone, about even if everybody in here gets everything back to residential, that's still not gonna stop it.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, no, no, not
No,
at
that's a whole
all.
separate issue, that's a whole separate
Yeah,
issue,
that's-
this is just about us changing our zoning
Right.
for our personal property, nothing else matters.
We have to come up with a different
Yeah.
strategy.
Well, that's completely different issue, completely different topic, it's a different meeting altogether.
And we're processing the application we received based on the existing land use and zoning.
Yeah.
And compliance with that.
Yeah.
So even if you guys change, an RV park could be approved to go next door.
Like we're saying.
With
that
access on
when it
Braves.
was purchased, the language said no commercial use.
Yeah, but that's,
And even the business he has there now, it was very, I looked at the original permit, he suggested.
yeah, but we're not,
you know, it's like-
we're not.
Yeah, but- So there has been a switch,
Thank
so
you.
we're wondering why, this is a different conversation that hasn't been allowed to be spoken about, but it's like, why is there such a, what changed all of a sudden? Where it's like, okay, only 4 people, only 2 people can come in and out of that building for your golden, development property. And it's very strict, and it said only this many people will come in and out, and it's like signed, in there in the original application. And now it's like, oh, well, we can't stop them from having 50 people coming in there now. So it's like, wow, they've changed it.
20 years and.
Oh, yeah, but
But anyway, that's
we don't
different.
understand it as reticent.
That's the, oh, you want,
No, I just would encourage everyone to not think about that and think about what you are using on your property, how you intend to use your property value. Those are what you need to focus on, not what's going on all around you, because that's your really big issue.
And we are, can I just go back and confirm something? So the surveys that we designate, this is what I wanna be. If I understand you correctly, you said, because I was asking as a majority, is it 6 out of 10? And then we turn back into RR. But I believe you said, no, that that's a suggestion from the homeowners and that the city will then do what they do.
Yes.
They appreciate our suggestion, but it does not necessarily hold weight.
You're not voting. The council is the one that will make
Right,
the decision.
okay.
So the parcels that come in that are identified on the map, you go to the council saying, these are the people. These people would like this designation, and the council then makes a decision if they change it from CP to that designation. That is a council
But
choice.
if they're all residential right now, and everyone or the vast majority wants to go to RR, I'm somewhat flabbergasted that the city may say, no, we're gonna let Walmart do it next year.
Yeah.
I just can't tell you what they're going to do.
No, yeah.
I can't tell you what they're going to do. That-
Yeah, and I'm a little concerned that you're saying that our wishes as homeowners for decades are merely suggestions. I'm concerned with that.
That's limits.
You have to talk to the council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're listening to you, that's the reason you're here
We'll talk
tonight.
about it.
The council directs
This is-
you.
My age, I'm not gonna live 10, 20 years, so what happens when one of my daughters or grandson inherit the property? Is that going to affect them?
Yeah, does the grandfather,
As long as it stays a residential
as
use.
long as it's.
So it's part of the estate?
For,
Yeah.
no vacancy for 6 months, because at that point, they go back to commercial, so you have to keep it vacant, occupied as a residence. You can't let it go vacant. It's vacant.
Yeah, we can go with it, we have plenty of that.
Yeah. I agree.
Now,
It'd be fine.
now
Well, it's still a concern though.
No, yeah.
I'm gonna say this, I may lose some friends that there lost. Anyway, so. I don't want to lose my choice. So if everything goes, if everybody in here decides they want to go back to straight residential without the commercial tourist, which would include me, then I would lose my choice, right? I would just go straight to residential.
Mhm.
This way, where I am right now, I have a choice. I can choose commercial, or I can choose residential.
But you have a choice of limits.
It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
I'm not
If you
gonna
go-
build any more in my house.
Yeah, if you go back out residential, they can petition to rezone it back to commercial. You have the
I don't
option.
wanna go through all that, I'm
Okay.
already that way.
All right, well, I'm just saying that's,
So what,
But your property is limited by being CT.
yes.
Cause she doesn't want it.
I don't wanna.
Yeah, but you're on the, she's also on the end. You butt up the CT no matter what.
I'm
you
on the
got.
very end, plus
Yeah.
I'm right by the freeway, I've
Yeah.
got, you know, if somebody behind me decides that they're gonna develop that property,
Big 60
if
acre.
they buy my property, they got freeway frontage.
Yeah.
And I have to look at that.
Yeah, you can see
Well, I
that.
don't wanna lose it, so what's my option, just to say, I don't wanna change.
One thing when I look at this, so you are
She's at the very point.
at Martin Lane at the
I'm at
back,
the very end.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
right there.
Very end.
So could that stay tourist? Yeah, that could stay the commercial tourist and everybody before you? Or as long as they're contiguous, so anybody on Betty Lane that touches the tourist could still be tourist destination. The inner ones could go rural, residential. And the two on the end closest to the freeway can stay tourist destinations.
Including the two now on Martin Lane, there's two that butt up to existing commercial tourism.
Yeah, those could stay, as long as they're contiguous.
There's only one that butts up to the commercial, up to the property behind us, and that's us.
No, all of these properties butt up. This is commercial.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
one, this one, this one, this one, this one, you.
Oh,
And
that's
then
Betty
us,
Lane.
and then the next one,
Everyone
they butt up to
Betty
commercial too. So these properties and these properties are continuous. They could
Betty
stay.
Lane can stay as a choice because they butt up to it, right?
Yeah, right.
And I can stay as a choice because I butt up to it.
Yes.
Can we possibly look at the difference between RR and RA for us, since we all agreed to, well, most of us, for the RA, but now looking at the lot size, it makes sense to go to RR, but what's the pros and cons between RA and RR?
So that's shown to you on
Yeah, you have a map, you have a schedule.
on this slide. Allowed uses per zone for the residential zone. And when you look at that RR column right here,
Yeah.
those are all your allowable uses.
Can you go back to the first page? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I'll keep moving it.
So there's not a huge difference in the allowed uses in between RE and RR. There's a few here and there, but there's not
So this
a
pretty
long
much the
list
same
of
thing.
changes.
I mean, as far as the.
Close, yeah.
gives you more uses actually, but you don't want to have petroleum storage products on the site. I don't know.
And one of the biggest differences is the animal keeping factor because of the larger and the smaller lot sizes. Yeah.
So,
Well, what's a larger?
what's this one right here, residential?
Accessory.
Accessory use.
Yeah, so in RA, you are allowed, right?
Yes.
So in RR, you wouldn't be allowed to have accessory unit?
No, follow that
think
one
you are.
across.
Permitted in all of them.
There's no, I mean, RA is out. It's
And then
really-
these notes, these numbers on the
It doesn't make
side
any
are
sense.
specific regulations for that particular use. So this might be animal keeping or second dwelling unit.
They're talking about horses and cattle, they're not necessarily talking about chickens and goats.
Right.
The other problem with, I don't think we can approve RA in this area,
Yeah.
because you're not adjacent to any RA.
Right.
None of your parcels comply with RA.
Right.
And so from basically other decisions in the state of California, that would not be an appropriate decision for the town to make it RA.
Right, so that's why we're here today, because the RA was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really it's RRRE, but we want RR.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can I ask everybody here a quick question?
Sure.
I'll answer it very quick. So, well, my name's Pepper. I'm on Branch Road there, too. So, here's most everybody that's for or against this project, and our rezoning, we're all here. I wonder if we could maybe take down some of the sites. Because I just think it diminishes our We all know what's going on, we truly do, I think so, I see it. But I think there's a one size put up where we're going to police, but yeah, I think there's a one size probably put up where they're really not supposed to. But I mean, I just really think, don't we all know what's going on? Do we
It's
have-
for the town.
Well,
We have 168 people who signed a petition that live around there. They didn't know about it.
I was just asking. So
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
once they saw that, they're like, what? We don't
Yeah.
want an RV
Yeah, you're
park.
talking, yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah, you're talking about the other.
Excuse me, could we revert back to our land use discussion, please? Jared?
I had just something I wanted to really think about also. I think what Ray here has a really excellent point. If you are adjacent to land that is going to remain commercial, such as the very large Horseshoe Bend property, it's absolutely inevitable, no matter what, that will be developed most likely in the lifetime of most of the people that are here tonight. And there's gonna be a potential for an offer on your property, as there was with the Turtle Island property in the future. And if you rezone to residential, that commercial developer is going to have to go through their very own general plan update, EIR, and rezone, a very arduous, time-consuming, and expensive process. From the perception of the developer who will develop that very large property, purchase your land already zoned commercial and not have to complete the residential to commercial rezone is absolutely going to make your property more valuable to that future developer. That's just something
I'm
to keep in the
curious,
back of your mind.
why does it bother you so much that they're wanting, they do want to go residential so they can do what they want?
With our families.
Why, how does that affect your project?
I don't think that's a fair question.
Well,
You're way off topic.
Well, I don't know why he's even here.
Raise the
that's
question,
actually
it's
brought it up.
response to his question.
He opened the door.
So are you thinking there's gonna be some road coming into your property someday? You're gonna buy this and enhance the property house? What's the future plan?
So I believe that I can't tell you in that far in advance what my future plan is, and I can't tell you what the large Turtle Island guy's plan is as well.
And so,
The big one.
I'm a believer that having residential in the middle of commercial and totally surrounded by commercial is absolutely, and I've seen it many times, a recipe for future land use issues. There's gonna be future issues potentially bigger than this when there's a parking lot that backs up to this, right? And there's commercial activity going on either side of you. That's what's going to happen in the future at some point. And to honestly stick your head in the ground and say, no, we're gonna stay residential, but you have no control over about the commercial around you, you're not gonna win.
Well, we actually do, because here this meeting is about us saying we don't want to do commercial, because these are our homes. We don't live in Sterling Ridge. This is where we bought homes. We spent a lot of time working on our properties. We want to keep our homes here. And, I already know, right behind Quickback, there's gonna be 130, RV park built, gonna have a trout pond, 3 pickleball courts, a clubhouse, a pool. It's right off the freeway. If I had to choose between an RV park in the middle of the neighborhood and one that's got sweet amenities, I'm gonna go to the one behind Quickback and go walk over it and get a hamburger at Habit Burger and go get a Frosty at Chick-fil-A, because I can walk there from
we bordered back to an RV park discussion, so please.
Yeah, that's gonna come up in the next 3 meetings.
Yeah. But we're sticking to land use and, proposed projects out there and that haven't even been developed are very speculative. Sir?
That's the same thing we had to deal with back in the 80s when they tried to develop the Turtle Island. A bunch of the people, just like this group here, got up and installed it to where it had to be on a boat. And he was so mad, the owner of the property was so mad, that he pulled everything out.
Stormed out of the meeting, yeah.
And, I've been hearing Turtle Island for 50 years. I've lived in this area.
And nothing's happened.
Nothing's ever been done.
And that last thing, it'll get stopped.
Well, this is all about, we've been there, we all, our families, we're not looking to develop commercial, we're looking at our children and our grandchildren. We want to be able to pass on something to our children and our grandchildren. Maybe they want to live there, maybe they want to sell it, they want to change zoning, whatever they want to do. But for us, as grandparents, property owners, and older property owners, we are only there because we bought this land and it was an investment for our future generations. And that's why we're here. We want to secure that away from being blindsided and If that all happens, it happens, but we want to be able to just secure for our children, our grandchildren. I'm sure you all feel the same way. Yeah, that's all.
Other questions on,
Yeah.
between the RR and the RE, because those are kind of the choices that you're faced
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question. But changing over to the RR, I know you said there were some differences on the ag uses for animals and so forth. Do you have an idea of what that actually constitutes?
Chrissy's going to.
I don't have that section, it's the link in there that I don't have.
Yeah, I
but
don't think
it's-
this will link it.
Every half acre?
It's
What I was
when
told.
you're an acre, when you're less than an acre, then that will really affect how many animals you can have.
Mainly chickens,
Yeah, it's,
but
and
you
then-
couldn't
And
have
goats.
hogs and swine and,
Yeah, but you
Yeah.
can have a pet. You can have a pet.
oh yeah, you
Right,
can have
or
household
whatever,
pets.
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Two
you could have
pets.
an aviary, you
Yeah.
can have, I think, 4
You
chickens,
Can't have a
No
cattle farm
roosters.
and
Yeah,
horses.
yeah.
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 Well, not a lot of horses, maybe 2 horses. And horse.
Per acre
If
on
your
RR.
property is only an acre, you're not going to have the land available to have, 12 horses on it.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
So to dovetail off of my son's question, my mother owns 2 acres. And it was RA before this designation change. They've been able to have cattle, they've been able to have pigs and horses. What changes? Goats, yeah, what changes? What limitations would change now?
Let me try to look that up.
I don't think it's many.
I can bail out of this in a minute.
I'll see if I can connect here.
Yeah, equestrian facilities are allowed
Equestrian facilities are allowed.
in residential. I mean, you can have animals, and you can have a cattle, you can have a couple cattle, maybe a couple horses. You just can't have a lot, like on Horseshoe Bar Road, you can't have 50 cattle.
It says equestrian.
Well, yeah, you can have a little training thing, I don't know, trucking your horse, but I see what you're saying, I know what you're asking. I don't think it'll change for the 2 acres. I think this affects the 1 acre and the smaller one, the 0.9.
So the difference is having a kennel, for example, and that you can have that with a use permit in residential estate. You cannot have that in rural residential.
And that's
No
shown.
hogs and swine in rural residential. And then you can have horses and cows, but you need a use permit for that.
And you have to be
Minor
over
use
an
permit.
acre.
Right.
Over
Can
and
you have goats?
Let me see.
those are considered chickens.
So what you can have is an aviary fewer than 20 birds, an aviary of 20 or more birds confined, beekeeping, dog or cat breeding kennels, fish farming, fowl and poultry, horses and cows, household pets, large animals are permitted, but there's another table to define that. Rabbit breeding, small animals, and worm farming. So animal keeping standards, let me see, this is really large. Okay, so you have to have, the only one that I see that would be an issue is you need 1 acre to have horses and cows, and you need 2 acres for hogs and swine, which is why it wouldn't be permissible in RR. And then large animals are emus, goats, llamas, miniature horses, donkeys, ostriches, sheep, and similar sized animals. And for that, you need a ½ acre and no more than 6 per acre.
6 llamas, 6 horses, whatever, okay.
Yeah. The horses would be, you would need the acre for that, but the, you could have, say, an emu on a ½ acre.
Or goats.
Yeah.
6 goats.
If you had an acre and a half, you could have.
It would
horses,
be
maybe 3.
progressively, yeah.
Prorated.
That makes.
If the rezoning goes through for people, does that mean where they can now maybe reappraise, reevaluate your house and all that stuff, and where it could possibly make taxes move up? No?
Not with a land use change by the town.
Right.
Those kind of things happen through the assessor's office when the property's sold. Then it gets reassessed.
And just to be clear, we're doing a land use change after the general plan land use designations are changed, then the town is required to update the zoning code and zoning map. So that's the second step. So the zoning doesn't come with the land use change, it's a separate step to redesignate the zone. That's why-
Because the general plan is our higher document. So once that general plan gets adopted, it has to float through all the zoning code and be consistent with the general plan. Which right now, there are many places where it's not.
Right.
So that's a lot of cleanup stuff.
Also, if you have questions, call Mary Beth, because as you can tell, the code, the plan, there's all these tables that relate back to one another, so you almost have to bring up, I want to do this, to take a look at, can I do that? I wish it was simpler than that, but none of this is really straightforward and simple.
The planning department probably reviews 5 different of those type of requests a day, if not more. You know, people call in, hey, one guy called today, his daughter's at Del Oro doing FAA and has a hog. And he lives in a residential subdivision, and wanted, now that, they're getting it ready for fair, can you bring it home and grow it till fair time because school's out? And I'm like, sorry, not in your district, because he was gonna put in a hog pen and have it in his backyard. And that was a 7,000 square foot or less subdivision parcel size. Your neighbors would just go nuts. And I hate telling people no, but that's just the way that goes. I was glad he called and asked. But various things, setbacks and, all sorts of different requests, and especially new landowners, people are moving in and buying in Loomis and they think they can do this and that, and it's like, no. And people learn the hard way sometimes. Their neighbors rat them off and code enforcement gets involved, and we set them straight. We give them the codes and ask them to comply.
But Mary Beth can give you the right answer, but the answers of what you can and can't do on the property if you have questions. I think the tables that you have here are pretty descriptive, but as you think about what you want your property to be, just check with Mary Beth and say, can I do this or not, between, say, the RE and the RR. I think the RA, as a planning staff, we're going to have to recommend no, just because there are no parcels of that size and there's no RA adjacent.
They don't kill us right out of the water, so we better go with something that's more acceptable, so we have a chance of getting it.
I guess my only confusion is that previously they were RA, so to go back to the prior designation seems, it seems odd that you wouldn't allow them to go back to what they previously were, even if they weren't compliant.
I guess the council could make the decision to do that, but you don't have any RA adjacent to you. You have RR adjacent to you, and none of the parcels are 4 acres. They're all the smaller parcels, so it becomes difficult to say that you're an RA when you don't have the characteristics of a RA district.
Because then all of a sudden you'd be able to have horses and all of that under the RA, but that's not what this 1 acre minimum parcel size area allows. So that wouldn't be compatible for your neighbors.
Yeah, one time this was all a big county map, and none of these things weren't as detailed, and when changes, like for instance on this map, there's changes for a square footage that is not changed on the actual acres of the property. So they have a land line that's 18 feet by 228 feet into a neighboring property. That's not taken off of the neighboring property's acreage, but it was bought at the time, and we have recorded at the county, all that stuff. So these maps aren't even accurate in time. This was all like one big agricultural area.
Yeah.
Orchards. This was orchards.
I guess my question would be, is there any other things that we should be worried about swapping over to R that we're not thinking about, that or any suggestions to think about for the future?
I think the biggest question is, what's the future of your property? If you're living right on Brace Road and, you think maybe someday you can sell it for a higher dollar because it has that commercial frontage, that would be important. RR, that it will stay residential until somebody comes forward and actually makes and requests a change and gets that approved. What do you think?
And even in RR, there's still businesses that are allowed. I mean, it all depends on how they want to change it in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just think about what your plan, how you would like to use your property. I mean, it's your property, you know, you want something that's going to work for what your plan is. If your plan is to build, you know, a granny flat on your property, then it would make sense for you to want to change to residential. If your plan is maybe to keep an open mind because maybe you want to sell later on, then that's something you have to think about, so.
Right, sir.
So, on that note, I purchased on Betty Lane a while back, a few years ago. I was told specifically I was not able to do the green unit.
That's commercial.
Because it's commercial.
Well, I'm grandfathered, right?
No, it's still,
It would be a new
your
unit
existing
on
use
there.
is grandfathered, no new uses would be allowed, so the granny flat is a new use.
So that would be considered new use.
So going to RR.
So any additional work is considered
New
new
use.
use, it's not
Let me
the
go to that
dwelling.
last slide.
The land itself doesn't hold residential, it's any work done.
Any new footprint, yeah.
So right now, if I wanted to remodel my home and make it larger, I cannot.
Right.
Correct.
You're limited by CT, is what he's saying. You're grandfathered in.
So I wasn't
but
told
you are-
that when I was
That's because we didn't know.
Yeah, so going to
Nobody
RR.
Well,
you
no,
know,
I talked to the town before I purchased.
Oh.
The very, yeah, the
I came
value
here
is
specifically
like,
for zoning, I got all these maps, I got the information.
Yeah.
I understood this whole, hey, as long as it wasn't left empty, that it will stay grandfathered in. So I understood all that 3 years ago. But this part, it didn't click, right? So now I have issues with it. Okay, yeah, yeah.
So that's one of the slides in your packet. At the bottom, you know, it says what's allowed, residential expansion not allowed. Allowed is residential existing, and then commercial use expansion allowed only as commercial, but not allowed or limited as residential.
I think what he's wondering is when he was working with the town, when he bought the property, why wasn't he informed that he couldn't do anything with the house?
I have no
And then
idea.
he worked one-on-one with the town?
I could say the same thing, we inquired about the property that Jared bought, and they told us that's a wetlands back there, you can't live back there. They told us that you can't use that as a residence, you can't live in that house, you can use it as an office. We were told all these things by the town that discouraged people from purchasing that property. So it's the same thing, you're told one thing then, and now it's completely different, so that's exactly what happened to us.
Yeah, because I understand where he's coming from. Because if I was to apply a house and I had been told, well, it's residential, yeah, you can do it as residential. And then all of a sudden I go and spend all this money to have plans to have my house remodeled. And then 3 years later, I'm like, well, you can't do anything because you're a commercial tourist.
Exactly.
That would be pretty maddening.
Yeah.
And I think that a person would be able to take some action.
Well, that's what we're gonna do at the next town meeting, we're gonna bring all these things up, because that's gonna help our case change.
And maybe it'll take some other action. For being given misinformation. Because that's what he was done.
it seems like this project has been a catalyst of change, but maybe in a different direction than what the residents there got, having one knowledge, is now being changed from what they were told.
It's almost like the town didn't want to let people know.
I don't know whose town staff was that talked to you, so I can't address that.
You guys are fairly new in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I've been here
they have no
almost
idea.
4.
You're dealing with previous problems, it's like, I take on an account and I see what the other sales
And just so you know,
reps are.
as we came into this process,
Yeah.
we found documents the town had adopted that we didn't know existed and they weren't being applied. So one of the things in this general plan process,
Bring it on.
we're trying to bring
Clean it up.
all these documents together so they're consistent. We also found within the general plan and the general plan to the codes and ordinances were not consistent.
Yeah, there's,
And so the other thing we're trying to do is to make them consistent.
You
so that-
basically have to make it to the general plan, you can't make the general plan to the codes.
That's,
So
yeah, so
that's-
the general plan is first, and then the codes are
Right.
made consistent after that.
The
So
codes have to be conformed to the general plan, so that's
So,
the issue that we're.
in the committees that we had, that was a whole lot of discussion, was where we had inconsistencies. Things like, in one place it said residential hand had 50% coverage, another place in the code it said 30% coverage, which trumps and which is it? And so we're trying to resolve this. So be aware of some of the confusion that you may have, is because I think this town didn't have all their documents together, and people may not have known that that was adopted back in 2001. And here we are, we're now trying to apply all those. So Mary Beth actually went into the archives to find documents so that we had all the documents that this town has adopted. Kind of a dusty process,
Yeah.
but we found them.
But there were things that were approved, that then when they did the zoning code update, or the general plan update, or zoning code, it got rolled into zoning, but now we have this document, and you have to look in two places. So we had to verify that, what was in this document approval is over here, and it's accurate, and then that document goes away because we have it in the code. Say a specific plan or a specific plan policy for an area or something like that. And they may have been different, the original document versus what got in the code. But
The person who
so
was given the misinformation shouldn't have to suffer for it.
Yeah, well,
understood.
I can't, I'm sorry.
Well, yes.
One thing when I was out knocking on doors in your area, some people were home, some weren't. And through conversation, somebody mentioned, like, say somebody, and I don't mean to get on the RV park, but I'm using this as an example. It could be anybody riding a bicycle. And all of a sudden they come down, Betty Lane and Martin Lane aren't very well signed. It's like, oh, okay, there's Betty Lane. And you take down the gravel road, and those are private roads, not public roads. But one person was concerned about people actually going down those roads. And one thing I came up with was, at the end of every lane, a $60 sign posted, no trespassing, so that, regardless of what happens going forward, if somebody's on Betty Lane or Martin Lane, and they're not right to be there, you call the sheriff. Having the no trespassing sign, pardon?
Is the sheriff really going to come out?
I can't speak for the sheriff.
So,
But-
well, okay, so suggesting we call someone who may not actually resolve the issue, that's the question. You suggested we call them, and then when I said, are they gonna come out? So you can't speak to that, which I understand. you're
I
not
would
the
think
sheriff,
that a call to dispatch with a trespasser on a private road would get their attention and get the sheriff out there. But I can't speak for them, their call schedule or anything. But if it happens and it goes weird, the sheriff has enforcement because it says no trespassing.
Well,
If it doesn't say no trespassing,
No, it's still private property, even if you don't list it as no trespassing, it doesn't change private property into public property. But my husband was a cop for almost 40 years, and he laughs when we suggest that you would call a cop for trespassing. Because he said, you probably have so many better things to do than to come and get a trespasser who, that maybe all he's doing is driving on a road and not really creating mischief.
and maybe by the time the sheriff gets there, that person's gone.
Mhm.
But the importance is to post, even if it's on your own property, no trespassing. That was just an observation that I had that I wanted to share with you guys for in the future.
Well, we put a sign at the end of our road, at the beginning of our driveway, I guess.
Yes,
And it says that it's a private road.
Just like that, yeah.
No, it doesn't say no trespassing, but we were told it still is good enough to,
as long as it says private.
yes.
Yes.
It says no turnaround or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they were coming all the way down to our place. And what do you
Turning
want?
around, yeah.
I just wanted to see what was back here, now I gotta turn around.
Yeah, and posting that at the entrance would keep them from getting all the way back there, I would think.
Better.
It's just
No, it
a
doesn't.
suggestion.
Because You don't even see the damn thing, and it's a big sign.
Yeah, I saw your sign, and I went there anyway, but. Not that I was a guest, but I didn't think I'd get shot.
Point taken, it does not keep people out.
Right.
We have people that have come by and it's like, oh, you have a fire
I
sale?
want to sign that form.
Did you see that? From the freeway. Oh, jeez.
Go ahead, sir.
Actually, I do have one question. When going to rural residential, say somebody wants to have a home operated business, well, would that?
You can have a home occupation in a residential zone, yes.
Including construction related?
Depends what kind of construction.
So if he were to not perform any fabrication on the property, but he had heavy equipment on the property, would that be allowable as a housing facility for that heavy equipment?
As long as it was behind the front setback. So like the backyard.
20 feet.
Yeah, and you have to maintain those setbacks back there. Side yard, rear yard.
Home occupation is allowed.
Yeah, typically the home occupations are more consulting. You're not having people coming and going. But I'd say in that area, does it say specifically construction yards?
I'm looking at them.
Because those are.
I know that they said it was permittable, but I wasn't sure if there was any barriers to that would exclude other things.
I think if you started storing a lot of things, then that could
Then it
become a
would be nuisance abatement. And typically our contractor storage yards are in the industrial zone where they have, like Ray Miller's equipment and, those kinds of things. They're in industrial, but if you have, like one backhoe and one loader, that's probably acceptable. But, definitely you're not going to have employees coming there. It is strictly for the resident of the home, not to operate a business out of.
To rent the equipment out from there, that would be a different story.
Yeah, you could rent your equipment out, but you would be taking it to a site for however long and then bringing it back.
Ample of barriers to something like that, it would be the RR.
And then you can also do the accessory structure based on size, lot coverage, and all of that kind of stuff, height, and you can store equipment in there, and that way it's protected and out of view. And with the home occupation, you get your license, but then you also get your business license, and that's renewed every year. Anybody else?
So in respect to the forms that you're gonna hand out, do you need wet signatures, or can those be emailed back to you, scanned in emails?
They can be scanned and emailed, definitely.
Because as I said, we do have a few people who weren't able to attend tonight.
Yeah, and on the back of that PowerPoint is my email address and stuff.
I need two.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I know it's kind of a crazy conversation, but we do appreciate the help.
Well, and if you have questions, please feel free to contact the town. I'm happy to answer them.
Are you bringing the girls?
Okay, all right, okay.
And then it looks like there is a date.
And you have a lot of consequences.
No, and I mean,
Well, I'll make it about it, because it's
Well,
so.
RA wasn't.
They were no, we know.
For this, yeah, I'm talking about when that occurred back, way back when, I don't know.
Some of the stuff was in the committee that wasn't.
Yeah.
And all the people up there, take that from the, this is our property. Some of these are newer.
I just gotta talk to you. Thank you, Anders, thank you for coming, I appreciate your help.
There were times when we're getting into this whole thing, and I don't think about it. You know, just like fertilizer, you know, so like don't think about that.
Somebody who's buying it.
Right.
Not very much.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, we have to think about what do you want? Do you really want to add on to your house? Change it. We do that.
Jared was actually like, and they were on your property. But I think this lady here makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
You look very familiar. I don't know from where.
Well, let's see. Been around here, I helped the Classic County Planning Board. I'm working in that. I don't know.
Thank you.
Excuse me, before everybody leaves, let me yell into the microphone. As Andy said before, if you walk out of this door and you have a question, call me. Call me, email me, do whatever you need, and I will make sure to get you the answer. Thank you. And thank you all for being here.
Did you close the meeting?
Yeah.
So they show right here, lot line adjustment, 18 feet over. We gotta buy that.
Do you have a card?
You know, I don't have any cards with me.
Contact's at the end of the.
At the end of the PowerPoint.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, yeah.
It's on the second to the last page.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.